Hi, this is Gail with Experiences You Should Have, your how-to guide for amazing experiences. My guest today, Mary Stange, I hope I'm saying her last name correctly, and she has the blog Bambinos Without Borders. And what's really unique about Mary is that she and her husband and her two kids have traveled the world, and her kids are 4 and 1.5, and they currently live in Colombia. However, this episode is not about Colombia, but I see a future episode. But this is about taking a steam train through the Scottish Highlands. That's right. And Mary did this trip with her family. And so for those of you who have kids, this is a family-friendly experience you can have. I hope you enjoy, and please visit Mary's blog, bambinoswithoutborders.com. It will be in the show notes. Thank you. So hi, we are here with Mary from the travel blog Bambinos Without Borders.
That's correct. Bambinos Without Borders.
Yeah, and so you go on all these travel adventures with your kids, which is pretty awesome. I've got a 3-year-old. How old are your kids?
Well, my son is 4.5 now, and my daughter is just about 1.5.
Where do you currently reside?
We currently live in Bogota, Colombia, but my husband works for the State Department, and so we are always traveling, and so we try to jump at any opportunity to travel with our kids.
That is amazing. I think we're going to have many more conversations because I'm trying to also figure out how to travel with my kid, you know.
Yeah. Well, it definitely has its challenges traveling with kids, but my philosophy is that it is the best way to show our kids the world and to create empathy and global tolerance and all these things that we want to instill in our children. I feel like we can give them through travel.
Agreed. I think experiences are just the number one thing in life that we can give to ourselves and to our kids. Hence the name
Absolutely.
Experiences You Should Have.
Maybe I'll make a spin-off, Experiences Your Kids Should Have.
Right. This is going to be podcast number 2.
Woohoo.
But how is it? I mean, I know we're going to be talking about today about traveling on a steam train in Scotland. But before we get to that, I have to know, how is it living in Bogota, Colombia, with your kids?
I actually love it. We've been here about 2 months now,
Cool.
and Bogota is just an enormous city. I think that was one thing I wasn't prepared for before I moved here. It's huge. I think there's something like 8 million people that live here.
Oh, wow.
And it's very metropolitan. You know, you can pretty much get anything that you're craving here. And it just has its own life, its own spirit. It's a wonderful city. And I hope that, maybe in the future we could talk more about Colombia because it really is a wonderful place.
This sounds like in another episode.
It's a wonderful place to live.
We have to. And I hate to be stereotypical, but many times when like Colombia's come up, that it's always kind of in conversation of people who haven't been there, it's always kind of seen as maybe that's an unsafe place to go. Or did you have that perception of Colombia before you went, and has that changed?
First off, my husband and I did a lot of research before choosing to come to Colombia, specifically because we knew we were coming with young kids. We wanted to make sure, is it a safe place? Is it somewhere we're going to be happy living? And Colombia has a bit of a dark history, that there's no denying that. And I think one of the most charming things about Colombia, and particularly the Colombian people, is that now, in 2018, there are so many Colombians that are really trying to fight that stigma. They say, yes, it was a part of our history, but that's not who we are anymore. They're really trying to grow their country through tourism, through agriculture, through just kind of like tourism diplomacy, I want to say,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
to show people that Colombia has a lot of life, and it's not just its drug history. So
I am very intrigued and I would love to come
yeah,
visit Colombia. So stay tuned because we will do another episode on Colombia because
yes.
I have to know more and I would love to talk to you again. But today is about Scotland, which is so funny. I've actually been doing a research project on Scotland and Ireland just the last 2 days. So I'm become immersed in this world. I've been learning about bus tours and coach tours and that sort of thing. But today we're talking about going to Scotland on a steam train and with your kids if you have kids. So when did you go? When did you go to Scotland and how old were your kids when you went?
Oh, well, my family took a trip to the Scottish Highlands in September of 2016.
Hmm.
So that would have made my son just about 2.5.
Okay.
And I was 5 months pregnant with my daughter.
Oh,
So
okay.
we just had the one on that trip, and I was pretty heavy going with the other
Right.
one, but
Right.
um, it's funny you mentioned Ireland and Scotland together because that was our full trip as we did 8 days in Ireland, kind of driving around, and then 8 days in the Scottish Highlands.
Which one did you like better? If you had to pick. If you had to go to
You
either
can't ask me that.
Scotland or Ireland and you had to go to one.
If I had to go to one, I'd go back to Scotland in a
Okay.
heartbeat.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Ireland. I love it, but no, Scotland it has to be.
so what in particular did you like about Scotland or the Scotland Highlands?
Mm. Well, I don't claim to be an expert on the Scottish Highlands at all. I was there just that one trip, but it was a very captivating trip. I'll preface that by saying that, since we were traveling with our 2-year-old son, our itinerary was a little more laid back. We had the chances to take leisurely afternoons and to just, sit out underneath the stars and not feel like we were jumping from thing to thing to thing. Like every day was just completely leisure, and it was fantastic. And I encourage every traveling family to just take their time when they travel. But on this particular trip, while I was probably perfectly content visiting castles and little sleepy towns, and yes, I was pregnant, but I'll still tag along to the distilleries.
Yeah.
Um, so we needed to do things with our son that weren't just playgrounds upon playgrounds upon playgrounds, which a lot of vacations end up being.
A lot
Um,
of playgrounds.
and like most, yeah, so many playgrounds. So, like most kids, my son was and still is completely enamored by any sort of vehicle. So whenever we travel, we try to take at least one excursion on a boat or in this case, it was a train.
So why the train?
It was one of the things we haven't done before. And I didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into
Yeah.
to start out with. But, my husband found the link and he said, oh, this is going to be great. We'll do this. Max is going to love it.
So how long was your train trip?
The one we took was out of, it was called the Strathspey Railway, and it was a 2-hour round trip, kind of a luncheon. They did like a Sunday luncheon trip. So it was 2 hours from start to finish, and we just went, we started in Aviemore,
Hmm.
which is kind of in the middle of the Speyside region in the Highlands, and it went through Boat of Garden and then ended up in Broomhill, which is just, I don't know if you do the math, maybe it's 45 minutes away by train.
Yeah.
The train stopped for 15, 20 minutes. The guests were able to get out, take pictures, kind of explore the tiny itty bitty station over there at Broomhill. Then we all got back on and came back to Aviemore, and that was the day. It was short, but it was really wonderful.
So I guess what was your favorite part about going and seeing this by train?
So, I mean, Scotland in itself has always kind of been a bucket list place for me,
Yeah.
and it captured my heart. The country, the landscape is just completely magical. It's green. It's mountains and rivers and cliffs and forest and wildlife, and everywhere you turn, it just feels like you're in a storybook. Every detail feels like it's living and it's breathing. It's it's very captivating. It is.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So that, I mean, it's hard to put that feeling into words and say that was my favorite part, but really it was. It was that kind of captivating spirit. Just knowing that there's so much history that lies in Scotland, and it was just it was a really magical time for us.
Yeah, I keep on seeing like Scotland and Ireland being described as majestic. Like, did you feel that it was just like this majestic area?
Yes, absolutely. Majestic is a great word for it. Everything about it is just very dramatic. From you could be raining and it's dramatic.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Maybe that's why so many like movies and TV shows have been filmed around that area.
Hey, yeah, there's a reason for it.
Right, right. So, I mean, how'd your son do on that trip? You've got a 2.5 year old. You're on a train. You're seeing these amazing views. Did he take to it? Was he looking out the window? Or tell me a little bit more about that.
So, like I was saying, it's been 2 years. He still remembers this trip. I think it was
Wow,
just yeah, and for a 4-year old to remember something that long is probably
it's
pretty
pretty
incredible.
good.
He really remembers the engine. He remembers, watching the engineer shovel coal into the firebox. He remembers climbing up into the driver's seat. He remembers kind of like exploring the thing. He remembers the noise that it made. So when you talk to him about it, it's really kind of incredible that um, he vividly he doesn't remember the lunch. He doesn't remember really the scenery. I don't even think he remembers me being there. I think he just remembers the experience of the large machine that a lot of kids like, and and that experience of being so close to it and climbing inside of it and watching it move and turn, and it was pretty fun. It was fun to watch him see it too.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
Hmm.
That's really cool. I just did a train trip with my daughter and husband, but it was like a 24-hour train trip. And yeah, yeah.
Where did
Uh,
you go?
we went from Portland, Oregon down to San Luis Obispo, California. And we had to sleep on the
Wow.
train. We're in coach, and my daughter slept way better than I did, and she's only 3. So, hey, it works. So I'm
You can
like,
sleep
okay,
anywhere sometimes, right?
cool. I'm like, you're gonna sleep on the floor, you're gonna sleep here, you're gonna like half your head is on the seat and the other your body's like hanging down and you're passed out. Fantastic. So you went on this train trip, and train trip you said was 2 hours? Is
Yeah, it
that
was 2 hours round trip.
yeah, so did
Hmm.
did you feel like you wanted to go on a longer train trip, or was that the perfect amount of time?
I think for the time that we had and the attention span of my son, it was
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Cool.
Um, I think that anything longer would have been too much for all of us. Having said that, we are, always trying to get back to Scotland, and I think the next time we do, I'm going to try to get onto to one of these longer trips. I think the one of the things that I love so much about this experience in particular is that you don't have to go to one place to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Rail isn't, well, it was such a large part of transportation, of daily life, especially in Scotland. And it harks back to just kind of a very historic time when you know, just the impact that these great machines had on industrialization and how they were so important.
Mm-hmm.
But you can go anywhere in Scotland and find a steam train ride. They're not used for travel primarily anymore.
Yeah.
But there are these tourist rides.
Yeah.
They've created these tourist rides for just to hark back to that feeling, that romantic nature of railway travel.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband has got me on to loving trains, and I'm excited to explore more via train.
Yeah.
And so what was the cost of your train tickets?
Um, well, again, it'll depend on which train you actually take, and how long it is, and if there are any food or anything. But the one that we took, the Sunday luncheon on the Strathspey, it was £43 per
Okay.
adult and 21.50 pounds per child.
Okay. Even though he's 2.5, you still had to pay for him.
For what I remember, yes, because he still got served a plate of food.
Got it. Got it. But for an experience that still sticks with you today, that's not a crazy expensive experience.
Right. I mean, it's an excursion. I feel like you're going to pay that if you go on on a boat ride or
Right.
or like a sailboat ride or any type of other excursion that you take when you travel. And it
Hmm.
was, it was one of the biggest things we did on that trip, and it was very memorable. So I don't regret it.
Yeah. Now, as far as like time of year, like what month was it when you were there, and is there like a suggested time of year to go to Scotland?
We traveled in September, which, while we still had plenty of beautiful sunny day while we were there, it rained a lot, and which is
Uh-huh.
which is typical for Scotland.
Right.
It's typical for the region. You're going to encounter the rain almost any time you go. But I am told that the best months to visit are May and June.
May and June. So it was raining. Are you
Mhm.
talking like a Portland, Seattle drizzle, or are you talking like a full-on
Yeah, that's probably
downpour?
more. No, you're probably more correct with it's like that Pacific Northwest drizzle. It's not quite, strong enough to break out the full umbrella, but it's annoying when you walk through it.
Okay. So what was in
Yeah.
your bag? Like what do you need to pack specifically to go on a trip to Scotland?
A raincoat.
Okay.
Wellies if you have them. Um, I'd say bring layers. Again, when we went, it was the summer, so well, summer is the end of summer, but
Right.
um, layers because you never know when the sun's really going to peek out. But it was cool,
Okay.
cool and chilly.
So I know there's so many castles there. There's so much to see. Plenty of places to drink. What were some of your favorite places to check out?
Well, like I said, we didn't pack too much into our itinerary because
Uh-huh.
we had the little one tagging along. We
Right.
tried to do one thing per day,
Mm-hmm.
which is always kind of my rule of thumb whenever we travel. It's just we'll plan on one thing and
Okay.
then we'll deviate from there. Um, we did a few of the distilleries.
Mm-hmm.
We went around to a few of them. I think we saw Glen Moray and Aberlour was right there, so my husband did that one.
So you're able to do some tasting, check out the distilleries with kids by your side.
Yeah, actually. There are quite a few distilleries in Scotland that are perfectly fine with the kids tagging along. I mean, it's a working factory when you think about it. And what kid doesn't love the large machine and seeing that kind of factory? So we brought them along for a couple of them.
And I think I saw a blog post of yours about that, so we'll make sure to link to it in the show notes if you want to find out
Absolutely.
distilleries in Scotland you could take your kids to.
Absolutely. There was another castle that was close to by where we were staying. It was, oh, what was it? I think it was called Belinda Loch, and I might be butchering that name, and I'm sorry to all of the Scottish folk who are listening to this.
It's
But
okay.
it's a, well, I mean, you got to admit, like those names are pretty hard to pronounce. But,
Right.
um,
I don't think we've
so
got a
yeah, it
huge
was,
Scottish following yet, but you never
no, it
know.
may,
You never
it
know.
may.
Right. One day.
Anyways, Belinda Loch was a wonderful castle. It wasn't a castle in ruins. It was very, very modern, very working castle with a historical aspect to it. But another thing I loved about it was it had a wonderful playground. I know I keep talking about playgrounds on
No, but it's
playgrounds, but
very true.
um,
Playgrounds are important.
it had a great playground. And I think if I remember correctly, it had a plaque in the restroom saying that they had won an award for best loos in the UK. So, um,
Cool. Very
if
cool.
you're into that kind of a thing.
It's pretty fantastic. I mean, there's something to say about a really good playground. Like my daughter associates the Needle in Seattle as the really cool playground by it. You know, it's
Uh-huh.
you want to go to great places with nice playgrounds where the parents can take a break and let your kids run the energy out.
Absolutely. And I think it was actually on this trip in particular, I think on our Ireland half of the trip, when I realized that, vacationing with kids, in particular with the 2-year-old, you're really just sightseeing on the drives between playgrounds. We'd
Mm-hmm.
one place, and then we were able to see some scenery on the drive to the next playground. And as we were driving to the next city, we'd go to the next playground. um, so you're able to actually have vacation in between playgrounds. So yeah.
You know what? That's a good epiphany. So if you just know that's what you're getting into, now you can map out all the playgrounds
Yeah.
and and the cool sights to see out the window. As far as food, I mean, you mentioned you had this meal and lunch on the train. How was the food on the train? And also, just how was the food in general in Scotland? Was there something memorable or a dish that you tried to recreate at home or anything like that?
Um, well, the food on the train was very nice. It
Uh-huh.
was, they tried to put on this whole air of a fancy Sunday luncheon. So
Wow.
it was 3 course. We had, I think, between us, we had tomato soup and smoked salmon. There was sirloin, pork, roasted veggies and potatoes, the puddings, the desserts, and of course, it all ended up with coffee and tea.
Ooh.
But yeah, as a Scottish food, separate from that, um, I think the most notable thing that, well, my husband ate it. I didn't really have the stomach for it. Was haggis. Um,
Huh.
and yeah, I wasn't really familiar with haggis before we went to Scotland. But apparently, what it is, it's like, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think it's like minced meat and like sheep stomach all together, and I don't know. He seemed to like it, but it's an Oregon thing, and
Did you like it?
he said he liked it, so
Okay.
he might try it again if we ever go back.
Okay. All right. All right. That's it's interesting.
uh,
Well, we'll find a good recipe
it's
and post in the show notes.
yeah. Maybe Pinterest has something on that. Who knows?
Right. Right. Uh, so if you went back to Scotland next week, where would be the number one place on your list to go besides the train?
Let's see. There are so many little hidden towns and islands and small places. I think next time we go, I'd really like to hit the Isle of Skye. That's a place we didn't get to. It was a little too remote for where we were staying at the time. Um,
The Isle of Skye,
and
you
I
said?
think the Isle of Skye. So I think one of the things that I'd really like to do. Oh, because so much so much of the Highlands is just it's very kind of remote villages and little small towns, other than the larger cities of, say Inverness and even Edinburgh and Glasgow. It's very small. And that was one of I think one of the biggest surprises for myself, is all the towns are very small along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm starting to plan my next trip now, so once
Yeah.
once I do, I'll let you know.
So where would you fly into to really have an epic Scotland adventure and go on a steam train to the Scottish Highlands?
Well, if you're looking to go specifically for a steam train ride, I'd probably suggest going on the West Highland Railway.
Uh-huh.
And that actually, I think you grab that out of Glasgow. And what's so interesting about that one is that it's a 5.5 hour trip. It goes from
Mm-hmm.
Glasgow to Mullig, and it's actually the route they use for the Harry Potter movies. It's
Oh, very
also known
cool.
as Hogwarts Express. Yeah, it's said to be one of the most scenic rail journeys in the entire world, and it shows landscapes that you can only see by railway. So I think I think if you were going to do one rail trip in Scotland, I'd try to get to do that one. That one sounds pretty great. And next time I go back, I think that might be something that I'm going to try to do.
Really cool. Really cool. Anything else you want to tell our listeners about the steam train ride or something in particular in Scotland that you should check out?
Yeah, I think that riding a train isn't necessarily all that exciting to a lot of people. It seems very tame. It isn't very adrenaline filled, but it's one thing that really ignites the imagination. Like I was mentioning before, it really harks back to this romantic era of railway travel, and in a place that is so filled with history and of magic. And to see it by train is really to see it at its rawest form. It preserves the country in a time capsule, and it's quite stunning to see. I think that anyone that has the opportunity to go to Scotland should absolutely jump at it, but also try to make a steam train ride, part of their itinerary. It'll be something that's very memorable.
That's fantastic. You've sold me. You sold me. I feel like I wanted to start planning this trip right now. And and it's something I can bring my daughter with me.
Absolutely.
I love adventure and I love finding crazy things to do in the world, and but I'm always trying to figure out what are cool places I can bring my daughter to and share with her those experiences and have these little family trips. So you're an inspiration, and I'm going to be checking out your blog even more, Bambinos Without Borders, to get new ideas of where I can travel to with my family.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Like I said, we're South America based right now, so there'll be more of that hopefully soon.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, we hope to always keep traveling.
Oh, I have no doubt that you'll still keep on traveling. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me today. Like, this has been such a pleasure to meet you. I'm so glad that we
You
connected.
too, Gal.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
me too. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, anytime. And it sounds like we need to do an episode on Colombia or something cool in
Stay
Colombia.
tuned.
So stay tuned.
We'll make it happen.
Now, I've got a very important question. Did you see the Loch Ness monster?
We certainly searched for it. That was one of the things we did. Is we went up to Inverness, and of course we searched for Nessie. Actually, I have some great pictures of my son looking out over the water, like with his little binocular hands, and searching. And he's like, "I can't find it, Mama. I don't know where the monster is."
Oh, man. I mean, Discovery Channel did like a special on it years ago, and it just made me want to believe it's
Pretty
still
convincing,
there.
huh?
It was very convincing, just like their mermaid special.
I'm sure it is still there.
It could be. Could be. I believe in Nessie. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I'd like to go and look and check it out and see, You never know.
It's a rite of passage if you go to Scotland. You got to do it once.
Hey, also, you podcast listeners out there, if you enjoyed this episode and you love trains, then check out a previous episode on taking a cross-country train trip across the United States on Amtrak. I got to interview my lovely husband on his adventure from Florida to Oregon. And that was actually done without kids in coach. So if you want to hear more about that adventure, please check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find Experiences You Should Have on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, please, please, please leave me a review if you like it. As a podcaster, I heavily depend on reviews. And please tell your friends, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you're only listening on the website right now, fantastic. But also locate a podcast app on your phone, such as the podcast app on your iPhone, or you could download a Google Podcast app if you have an Android and subscribe. Just search for Experiences You Should Have. Thank you so much.